Hello, good morning and welcome to the debate this morning hosted by FER de France. I'm absolutely delighted that you're all here, whether you're watching online or joining us in the gallery this morning. Welcome, it's lovely to see you here. Now, these debates hosted by FER de France are to underline the vital role that railways have in fighting climate change. And FER de France have invited some amazing, very interesting guests from both within the industry and outside the industry to come and discuss the issues that they face. So within the industry, we have people who are at the very top of their profession, people who understand the day-to-day challenges that they face and can tell us a little more about those. And then from outside the industry, we have a whole selection of people. We have policy advisors, we have politicians, we have those with a worldview who can give us an even bigger idea of where we go with the railways in the future. So allow me to introduce my guest this morning. First of all, on my right-hand side, Jean-Pierre FARANDOU. Welcome, Jean-Pierre. Thank you very much for joining us. President of the UTP, Union of Public Transport, the professional association bringing together public urban transport companies. Jean-Pierre is also the executive chairman of quels, one of Europe's leading public transport operators, established in, I think, 15 countries? 15 countries. It's lovely to have you here. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Sitting next to Jean-Pierre is Henri POUPART-LAFARGE. Henri, thank you very much for joining us. The Executive Vice-President of Alstom. Joined Alstom in the late 1990s, previously been the Chief Financial Officer, member of the Executive Committee, and prior to his career with Alstom, worked at the World Bank and also the French Ministry of Finance. Henri, it's lovely that you're here this morning. Thank you. And then I said we'd bring together a selection of guests from outside the industry, but those with a lot of industry experience. And this morning, I'm very delighted to welcome Julio Gómez-POMAR. Julio, thank you very much for joining us. The Spanish Secretary of State for Infrastructure and Transport. Background is actually as an economist. Previously held many positions in government, including Secretary of State for Public Administration. Prior to this, he was also the president of RENF as well, part of the Spanish National Railway Infrastructure. Julio, it's lovely to have you here this morning. Thank you. Gentlemen, we've asked you here to discuss the vital role that railways have in the future fighting climate change. Julio, I wonder whether we could start with you actually, and whether you could give us your overview of the subject, because this morning we are talking about sustainable mobility by 2030. What models do we have for 2030?
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this roundtable. Well, I think that looking at sustainability and mobility for 2030 means looking at railway transportation. And we in Spain have made a very firm commitment with railway transportation. We are quite well known because of the high-speed trains. We have built in the past 4 years 450 kilometers, new kilometers for high-speed lines, and that gives an amount of nearly 3,000 kilometers out of a network of 14,000 kilometers. But at the same time, we have invested a lot in commuter trains. We are moving around 450 million people a year, every year, and from that figure, 400,000 people move in commuter trains. This is extremely relevant for sustainability and for the environment. Well, at the same time, the investment done by the Ministry of Transportation, of Infrastructure, 50% of that investment has been put into the railway infrastructure. So, as I said, we have made a very firm commitment on that. On the other hand, high-speed trains are not only connecting towns that are 600, 700 or 1,500 kilometers apart one from the other. They are what we call the commuter trains of the 21st century, because with all this network, we can also connect towns 100, 150 kilometers one apart from the other. And so this gives a picture of the territory, of the way people spread out in the territory, that I think is also very relevant in terms of mobility, sustainability, and environment. So that's my first statement regarding what we are doing in Spain and how we see the 2030 and how the railway is so much linked to this objective.
And if you look ahead now to 2030, do you see the mix staying the same between the commuter and the high speed, the longer travelling trains, or do you see even more people travelling by train? What do you see by 2030?
Well, there is a trend of people that keep on moving into the cities, so that will give commuter trains also a very relevant position. On the other hand, we are also facing an aging population. And when we look at people of a certain age, trains are very much convenient than other means of public transportation, and of course, much better than private transportation. So what I see is a mixed development of commuter trains, very much under the interoperability mood. I mean, connecting trains with underground and with public buses, and at the same time, very much connected with long-distance trains. So this is how we look at the future.
Rail very, very much a part of the future, very much so. Henri, allow me, if I can now, to come to you. I'm going to ask you your vision for 2030. Jean-Pierre, I'll ask you as well in a moment. But if you could just dream, if you had a blank piece of paper and anything was open to you, 2013, the future of railways, what do you see? What would you like to see?
I think everybody agrees that there is a need for a massive modal shift from road to rail. This has been set in all public policies. It's not the willingness of doing it, but how we should do it and how we can make it possible. Because we have to recognize that despite the willingness of this modal shift, it does not occur everywhere at the same pace. So this is a responsibility of all of us, and particularly of the industry, of course, to increase by far the attractiveness of rail transportation. And this attractiveness, it's a question of energy efficiency. It's also a question of economical efficiency and a question of intermodality and the connectivity between rail and the other modes of transportation. So I think the dream, as you said, is just to make it possible what we want to do. And what we want is this massive modal shift from road to rail. And we are investing a lot in terms of innovation in order to make it possible at the level of the rolling stock, but also at the level of the full systems, because it includes, I would say, the solution, the energy, the infrastructure, in order to optimize the full railway system.
I think in a moment we'll talk about that you face to actually make that dream a reality. But Jean-Pierre, I want to come to you now. So 2030, you have a blank piece of paper. What's your dream? What would you like to see?
I think in 2030, rail will be the backbone of mobility all over the world, because the issues we are facing are not specific to Europe. They are, we can see all these in any place of the world, in all the continents. Well, the question, the challenge is to carry a lot of people. People are more and more mobile, which is a good news for as far when you are in mobility business. They want to move, so the question is not to prevent them to move, is to transport them in a very safe way, in a way that protects the environment as a key one. And we know that rail is really the answer. Rail is not a problem. Rail is an answer to all these challenges. And basically, well, we can already see it in a way on the first stage, and Spain is indeed a good. I think rail is nothing is better than rail, high-speed rail in specifically to join cities when they are 300, 400, 400, 500 away, one for each other. So I hope that there will be in all the places a network with high-speed rail, because it's indeed very efficient to carry very quickly people, and there the model suite is from airline to on the short distance or medium distance to rail. And the second point is in the large cities. Cities are becoming larger and larger. You have cities of 5 million, I think in a short time 10 million people. So they spread, and if you want to connect the different places of the city, rail is indeed the answer. could be classical rail, also metro. I think metro can be also rail solution when you are speaking about systems, for example. And then the challenge is about technology, how technology will be able to transfer, to carry this big amount of people. So really rail will be the answer of the mobility system as a backbone. And of course, other means of transport, sustainable transport will be there. And public transport also will be a solution. But even bikes and so on and walking in the cities. So the backbone will be rail. Long distance and short distance, combining all the modes. That's my vision of how transport will be organized in 2030.
There is a lot of rail, of which I would expect you to say. You've been held up as a very good example of the commuter trains mixing with the long distance trains. What challenges do you feel you had to overcome to actually get to the situation that you are in today?
Well, the first point is that building railway infrastructure is much more expensive than building roads or the number of airports that you need to move people from one place to another. So this is one of the most important challenges. The other is that there is always a need of public support for the railway system. So the railway system cannot operate only under the basis of paying a price for the ticket. This price for the ticket does not recover all the amount of all the cost of the infrastructure. But it is true that in those lines in which we have introduced high-speed trains, we have really put the airplane communication in a second place. For example, when the line between Madrid and Barcelona started to operate, the share of the train reached 60 to 65%. And then if you move to shorter distance like Valencia or Seville, 81% of people move in train and just 19%, 15, 20% move in trains. However, still passenger transportation by railway is around 5% if we compare to road transportation, and this is the same at least as far as Spain is concerned for freight. Just 4% of the freight is moved in railway. So there is a lot of work to be done ahead, but I think that governments in Europe have quite clear what is the bet. The railway transportation should play a much more important role than roads as far as we progress towards the 2030.
Do you think you get enough support from politicians within Europe when you are trying to put in new lines, trying to put in new infrastructure? What do you think?
Yeah, I think globally there is a strong policy in favor of rail all across Europe. Now, having said that, it's clear that when you compare the different modes of transportation, we have to take into account all the positive impact of the rail in terms of CO2 emission, in terms of congestion, in terms of safety as well. So I think we sometimes lack clarity about the true impact, true positive impact of rail when you compare the different modes of transportation. And then instead of being seen as a subsidies, then it will be seen as a positive economic impact and at the end of the day, social impact. So that's the clarity that we need globally. And then for the efficiency of the rail, as I said, we need to invest a lot in terms of innovation. Recently, the European Union has launched Shift to Rail, which is a European-wide R&D program, which I think is extremely positive. It's fair to recognize that this is today only a fraction of what is given, for example, for the plane industry.
Do you think then that you should, well, obviously you feel you should be getting more money for research and development. Do you think it is up to politicians and governments to feed that money to you, or do you think the industry actually needs more money for research and development?
I think it's also fair to recognize that globally, the industry at the European level is not optimized. It's a very scattered industry at all levels, in the manufacturer, in the operators. The technical requirements are very much different from one country to another one. Safety regulations are different from one country to another one. So your point is totally valid. I mean, there is a lot to be done internally within the industry, within the regulators, in order to improve the efficiency of the rail transportation.
Jean-Pierre, I'm going to come to you now. We started this conversation by talking about the challenges to get to where you feel you should be in 2030. And already we've talked about problems with different legislation, getting that clarity there. We talked about problems of finance. What do you see as being the biggest challenge?
I think one of the biggest challenge, and Julio has mentioned it, is what will be the level of the track access charges for train operators. If you put 100% of the cost of the infra in the ticket, I think there we have a problem, because there will be only a few trains on the track, because a few people will be able to pay for a total cost of infrastructure into the ticket. So that's a kind of paradox. If you want the market to pay 100% of the cost of infrastructure, there will not be enough people using the track. So there is a question. So I'm pretty sure that in a way or another, some public money should, otherwise it's impossible. So there, saying that, I'm pretty conscious it's not so obvious, because at the time being, there is not so many public money in known country in the world. So I think the main challenge will be, of course, about financing. And then in a way, we have to be wise. I think maybe train is okay, but not on all pieces of the territory. You have to organize train between large cities, of course, but maybe train is not the mode which is obvious to go on very remote place of the territory. So then you have to think of combining the modes with coaches or whatever. So we have not to be, I would say, too much integrist about train. Mm-hmm. Train can be very performant, very relevant on very dense part of the territory. On most remote places, maybe you have to think of other modes. That's a key one. As far as research and development is concerned, there again, if you think on public money, not obvious. There are some on the university, for example, and maybe we can work better with the university world as far as R&D is concerned. We have a lot of, in Europe, we have very, very nice universities, so we can maybe use them better to make them work on R&D in rail. And as far as private is concerned, there's a question of margin. And this is another problem. I'm in charge of the companies in public transport in France, and we have an issue about margin in these companies. And if we want already to develop, we have to organize better margin for the companies. So, well, the challenges are economic in two ways. First, how at the very end the passenger will pay for infrastructure. If it is 100%, it doesn't work. And second, how can we organize the business in order that the margin for the operators are enough so that they can, or the manufacturer, so that they will be able to invest in R&D, and R&D will be key. For example, we have well, maybe I would say in the long term, maybe medium term, the driverless vehicles which are coming. You need to put money in R&D there. Yeah. Well, I think as always, the financial questions are not the simple to solve, but we have to work about it. But if I summary, I think we have to combine public and private to find the solutions.
Henri, how would you respond to that? Would you agree with what Jean-Pierre is saying?
Definitely. I think this issue of infrastructure comes back to this issue of positive externality of the rail, and how we take that into account when we are setting up the tariffs for the operators. It's also fair to recognize that, as being said, the industry as a whole, whether they are the operators, manufacturers, and so forth, are not in a very healthy situation, which does not bring a lot of money for innovation. So we need to, at the same time, it's a parallel effort internally to improve the efficiency of the global industry, to improve the efficiency of the system, and therefore to have the means to continue to innovate. So I think if we want to achieve the goals which are set for ourselves by the policymakers in terms of to increase the model, the rail model shift, then we need to have a disruption in our model. I think it's not just incremental improvement, it's a real disruption that we need to achieve.
Go on, you're obviously going to want to come back on that one, Julio.
Oh, I think that we are mostly agree with the issues. It is very true that to the extent that private vehicles don't internalize the external costs that they produce, I mean, the comparison between the cost of using private cars and using railway is not fair. But the society is not prepared in most of the countries to internalize the cost, the polluting cost of private cars, and this is something that we can miss. I mean, if you try to put a charge or a fee per use by using maybe you can run into political problems. So this is something to be understood. There is also a need to make clusters for innovation, research and development among all the actors in this sector. The role of the private firms is very important. We are talking about very large firms with a lot of muscle, so they can invest a lot on that. On the other hand, public-owned companies, they also carry out research and development, but maybe there is a need to put all these resources together. We also expect a lot from and the progress to be made by the Commission. And it's also true that trains can solve part of the problems. The design for mass transportation at a certain distance. If you go beyond, then you need airplanes. And if you move with not such a big number of people, then you need buses or you need another thing. So that brings the issue of intermodality as a very, very relevant issue for public transportation in the future.
Sorry, Henri, you wanted to come back on that one.
I think one thing which has been said which is extremely important is that at the end of the day, there is a lot to do with behavioral of the people and the way we can educate the people, the way people could change their mind. We see that in the young population in urban areas, more and more have no cars. They are more, happy to take rail, to take car sharing and so forth. There's a lot to do in terms of education and political willingness to continue to. We did it in a number of areas. I think in the energy sectors, if you take Spain, for example, of course, a lot of improvements have been done for renewable energy. It has been done. We did it in terms of health on a number of things. I think it's the same for transport. We need to progressively change the behaviors of the population.
So how do you do that? How do you educate the population that they need to consider rail more? How would you suggest it was done?
Well, I think as always, it's both a question of education. As we see today, when you look at young kids at school, they are always educated on renewable energies or not to smoke, for example, on this kind of stuff. So there is education at early age. And then, of course, we need to improve the attractiveness. So we cannot force the people. And therefore, we need to have an offer which is more attractive in terms of connectivity, which is something, for example, that the young population looks for, in terms of I would say fluidity between the different modes of transportations. So I think it's both ways. We improve the offer and at the same time we educate the population as early as possible.
The connectivity you talk about, the great importance there of getting the different operators to actually work together. Do you think the relationships, actually Jean-Pierre, I'll probably come to you on this one, do you think that the relationships between different operators, different times is good enough and people do work closely enough?
Yes, I think so. I think that now more and more the different kind of operators, rail, public transport or whatever, that we work together more and more because we have understood that the key question indeed is intermodality. I think most of the passengers, they don't take only rail, they take a bus or a taxi or whatever, a car sharing to go to the station and so on. So it's really important to organize ourselves to combine our services. That's done. I think a key way to do it is digital services. Well, by the way, more and more people, they use a smartphone now to get informed, to buy the ticket, to check when they are on board. So really the way we will be able all together to organize these digital services for passenger is one of the today's challenge. And some work needs to be done yet, but I'm pretty sure that it will come very quickly. And indeed, it will be a big step to make public transport or rail service more fluid to people. I would like to come back also how can we promote the new behaviors and the use of rail or public transport. I think more and more operators, where we go directly to the people. For example, we go to the companies and we make some basic information, because most of our fellow citizens, they don't know how cheap it is to take rail or public transport. They don't know how it is convenient, because they don't know the offer. They are stuck on their car, and it's up to us to go in front of them and to explain how it's useful to change their behavior. For example, in France, we have a special week where it's in autumn, in September, and in this week we promote public transport very much, in order that the people that try once, and the idea is very simple: once you have tried once, we'll stay on public transport or in rail. So up to us to move, up to us to go to the people and make them change their behavior. I think it's possible, of course.
Do you have such a week in Spain? Could you have such a week in Spain, do you think?
Of course, we have, weeks in which we incentivate the use of, cycles or things like that. As an economist, the idea is that we have to design a set of incentives and to design a set of disincentives. And this is the way it works. For example, now in Madrid, we are facing pollution problems. And for the first time in Madrid, last week and this week, there have been implemented by the municipality of Madrid restrictions for parking in the center of the city. And, people have adopted to this. Maybe 2 years ago, this might be impossible to accept that restrictions were imposed to park in the center of the city. And now people understand this. So it's a way of establishing incentives and disincentives. This is the way we can educate people, make very attractive the use of commuter trains, undergrounds, and public transportation, move research and develop green electricity also. This is another important thing. And at the same time, to put a set of disincentives in using fuel energy, and that's the way it works.
Alstom's been one of the first companies to actually put in performance indicators to say that you want to cut the energy use in some of your solutions by 20% by 2020. I just wonder whether you feel that actually that stance should be adopted by more companies, and actually you should go one step further than it being a target and actually have it imposed, make it, sort of some sort of legal framework for it.
Absolutely. As you have said, we have set some targets in terms of energy efficiency for our products, so minus 20%. In addition, we have also set for ourselves some energy efficiency for the way we produce and manufacture our products internally. I think on top of a legal framework, what we are looking for, and I think it's being done by the operators, is that they include in their tender, in their analysis of the products, the energy of efficiency of the products during their lifetime. The good thing about energy efficiency is that the environmental performance is absolutely correlated with the economical performance, because both you save in terms of money and you save in terms of CO2. So this is something which is more and more included in the way our customers are looking at our products.
Do you want to come in on that one as well and talk about other... Yeah, no, please go ahead. Do you think there should be a legal framework there?
Well, some legal, why not? But I think I prefer much more keen on attractive measures or incentives, as Julio has said. What strikes me, we made a recent inquiry in France, and really the citizens now, they understood the challenge and how much it's important to preserve the planet, to take public transport. More than 80% of the French people says, okay, public transport is a solution if we want to reduce the pollution, CO2 emission, and so on. And so there is a big change in the behavior of the people. So the first way operators can act is to be good operator, I would say. If we are safe, if we are on time, if our vehicles are comfortable, if our staff are very friendly to the customers, more and more people will let their own cars in the garage, which is the best behavior. That's the first one. And second, we have to work, of course, on the source of on energy supply, energy sources, more and more electricity. Of course, in trains, electricity, or metro and light rail, but on buses. more and more electricity, more and more biogas also. I think biogas solutions are very interesting because it's a cycle of energy. You use the waste, for example, you transform waste in gas, and you use this gas to feed the engine of the buses. So really, we have a big role to play, and it's the moment. Really the moment. People are ready to move, are ready to change their behavior. Up to us to be good, up to us to be attractive, up to us to talk more. I think we have to talk about that. So I'm pretty optimistic that the moment has come to operate a big switch of the people.
It's really interesting. I know you say that you're very optimistic, and Julio, from speaking from your position from Spain as well, have the right to be optimistic, because there was a survey, a report out, I think earlier this morning, talking to populations in different countries and saying, how keen are you for your politicians to take an ambitious target for climate change? And actually there were only 4 countries where the majority of the population said, yes, I'm ambitious. France was one of them, the UK, Canada, and the other one was Spain. So, I mean, we're sitting here sort of probably feeling quite pleased about our populations. But I just wonder what advice you could give for other politicians in different countries where actually you don't have, or they don't have the population's backing.
Well, the first thing is trying to understand why people oppose to our very ambitious objectives. And it is true that there's been an imbalance between well-developed countries and less developed countries. And this is in the mind of populations. Say, well, for less developed countries, the idea of we have the right of polluting as much as rich countries have been doing for a long time is very hard to beat. But we are moving now in a scenario of what will be the situation at the end of the century. And that means bringing together the population of all countries all over the world, because otherwise we won't reach any objective at all. So I'll try to encourage populations and politicians coming from other countries to stick to this idea of by the end of the century, we need very ambitious objectives. Otherwise, the young people that are going to inherit our environment will be not as good as what we have inherited from our parents.
To say the least.
Yeah.
You work across many different countries, many different territories. How different is it when you are working with different countries, with different infrastructure, as much as politicians, that sort of political infrastructure? How do you find it? What sort of challenges do you have to overcome?
Well, I think broadly we are living in the same world. And of course, the priorities are changing from one country to another one. It's clear that for most emerging countries, fast-growing countries, the number one priority is congestion. Congestion, pollution, immediate pollution when you go in large cities in Asia. So for that, the need of public transportation does not really answer to a question of global warming at that stage. It really answers to extremely concrete problems on the day-to-day of the life of the citizens of the cities. So on that respect, I would say that the priority is even higher, and the only, I would say, impediment to the implementation of projects is financing or project capabilities and so forth. But clearly in the urban network or in the urban market, I mean, there is a tremendous need for new urban systems around the world.
Jean-Pierre, do you want to come on that one as well?
Yes, I agree. I think the local challenges are now very much supported by people, because it's a question of their daily life. If the quality of the air is not there when you want to run, you are not in good situation. Your nose is not very pleasant, your throat and so on, your eyes. So there, people say, okay, it cannot be like that forever. The same for congestion. If you lose 1 hour, 1 hour and a half every morning in your car, you have the same issues in Australia, in India, whatever, in Europe or in North America or South America. So these issues are very concrete to people. maybe the question of global warming is not so obvious. And for example, I think the question of the origin of electricity is a good one. It's a tough one. In most of the countries, the origin is coal, and coal is not good at all for as far as CO2 is concerned. So I think in this issue, we have to work more and to explain that really, if we want to stop climate changing and if we want to reduce to 2 degrees the warmth of the planet, we have to work. We have to work on the source of energy. We have to combine the two. I think the most efficient is the local issues because people live with that. And then in the second step, we have to jump, and the governments are here to help all the actors to jump off of the basic question about the source of energy. Reducing consumption of energy and the source of energy are indeed the most difficult question to go forward.
There's quite a few difficult questions, it has to be said. We've got a few minutes for any questions. If anyone would like to ask any questions of my panelists this morning, if you'd like to raise your hand so I can just see you. Do we have anyone that would like to? No, it's been a fascinating debate. There is, sorry, yes, sir. Would you like to? Who's your question for?
It's a question to you three. Do you see connected cars as a very strong competitor for the coming years?
Sorry, when you say connected cars?
Cars that can connect to each other and being like a train on a highway.
Right. Okay. Who would like to take that one?
Well, I think it's not a competition. I would say our values is about sustainable mobility. So all the modes, all the means that goes on sustainable mobility are well accepted, I would say. What we fight against is the behavior of being alone in the morning in his own car. That's really the enemy, I would say, of sustainable mobility. So if it is a system that enables to share capacities, that share cars, and if these cars are electricity supplied, it's okay, I would say, no problem. So we don't think of competition of sustainable modes. We think about complementary rather. And the behavior, as Henri has said, of, for example, young people, they combine all the modes. They don't want to have they don't care having their own car. They don't care getting their driving license, for example. But they need several ways of traveling, of moving. So if it is a way efficient to move without getting his own car, it's okay, I would say. It's welcome.
Henri, is that anything at all that you've been even considering, or?
No, I think, as being said earlier, I mean, the trains are particularly suited for dense areas, whether it's in urban or between two mega cities. It's fair to recognize that when you have non-dense area, cars and these kind of systems could be very efficient. But you know, Norway has the highest proportion of electrical cars, and still there are some congestion. So the car issue is not just a question of pollution, it's also a question of land usage. So that's where we need to combine both in the smartest way.
Thank you very much for your question. Oh, Julio, do you also want?
No, just I mean to enlarge the point, if I understood properly, the idea of all forms of collaborative economies. I mean, sharing cars or sharing whatever mean of transportation is something in which we have a lot of expectations, and it will be very good, I mean, for the coming years. The thing is, how can you balance this with the existing means of transportation? But I think that collaborative economy in all the different areas is a question that will be having a lot of debates in the coming years.
I can well imagine. Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. Would anybody else like to ask anything of my panelists this morning? I think just before we end, gentlemen, we've been talking a lot about how vital rail is. I wonder whether you would have a message for those who are, at this moment, probably churning over that 900-page document with climate change at the moment, just not very far from here, whether you would have a message to the politicians. I'm going to start with you, Jean-Pierre. And Julio, I'm afraid I'm going to come to you last on this one, just to warn you.
Well, I think the moment has come to disrupt. We know if we go on the same way, we are against the wall. And if we change only smoothly, it's not enough. So really, I hope that the people working at the moment, They will dare to go on very strong decisions. They will dare to go on disruptions, and they will dare of kind of constraints. And they will accept some constraints in all the countries. So the moment is serious, and I hope that, it's difficult, but I'm very confident that everyone has understood. The question is now. We have to move now, and our responsibility. We are in a way. We are 50. We are 60 years old. We have delivered today, and our responsibility is to work to our son and daughters and our grandson and granddaughters. So it's really the moment to move and to act.
Disruption.
Disruption.
Disruption. So Jean-Pierre, Henri?
I fully agree. I think I'm very optimistic. I think that I'm amazed how the world has changed over the last years in terms of energy production and the amount of renewable energy that we have now on the planet, and the fact that, as you know, the coal production has decreased for the first time in 200 years. So my message is to all these people looking at our future is to say, okay, you have worked on the energy. It's time to work seriously on the transport modes as well and to do the same kind of disruption.
And I'm imagining you're going to put rail at the top of that. Okay. Julio, final word from you.
Well, I will remind people one very nice sentence coming from a French engineer that said that if railway could survive the 20th century, it will be the best mode of transportation from the 21st century. And to some extent that has happened. So we in Spain are investing in the past 5 years 26 billion euros. So we are really committed with this, and I'm completely sure that people will move to trains in a fast way. So the rates that we are observing in the use of railway are of 2 digits, and this has a lot to do with the price policy, with the adequate commercial policy, and to make it fashion. So I think that we are on the right track, that there is no need to a revolution, that people is becoming conscious how important is train transportation for them.
It's a really good place to end, on the right track, I think. I think we quite like that. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this morning. Julio, Henri, Jean-Pierre, thank you very much. And thank you all. Thank you.